Griffin. I'm associate professor here in the Hospitality College. And it really is a pleasure to be here and to host this event. And our goal this morning is to inspire you. And I know many of you have been to these before. This particular event is really, really special. We have folks here that graduated from the College of Culinary Arts, Hospitality College, College of Business, over 20 years ago. And if you think about it, imagine yourself 20 years from now. Do you guys ever think about this? Now, I know what you're thinking. I'll probably still be paying student loans or, don't worry, it works out, right? We all figured it out. I'm a graduate from 1988, so I was one generation before these guys. But our hope as a team is for you to see yourself 20 years from now, to see what the potential is for you, what the future could bring. Part of the way we're going to get there is we're going to have our panel look back on what it meant to them 20 years ago, what it was like for them 20 years ago, and talk a little bit about the path they took. And so our hope is that over the next hour, their description of their path will inspire you and provide a way forward for you. And so our goal this morning is to inspire you and to get you launched. Before I begin the program formally, I'd like to introduce our folks. And to your left is Dave Andrew. And so everyone give Dave a round of applause. And Dave is a senior vice president with a major reinsurance company called McLennan & Company, or Marsh & Company. Marsh, McLennan & Company is in New York. A multi-billion-dollar company. Dave, how many employees? 60,000 employees, offices all over the world. So if you take out insurance commercially, somebody else reinsures that, and Dave's company is the global leader in that category. And he's a senior vice president over there. He's done okay, huh? He's done all right. Former student here at Johnson & Wales, and prior to Johnson & Wales. How many of you do DECA? There you go, Dave. They're holding their hands up only partially. They're a little asleep. We'll get them going. So we have Dave here. In the center is Luke Ostrom. Luke, College of Culinary Arts graduate. Dave was College of Business, by the way. College of Culinary Arts graduate, huh? What year?
97 graduate.
So 1997, exactly 20 years ago. Do you feel old? I feel even older. Not yet. He's in the toughest restaurant market in the world, arguably, in New York City. Multiple restaurants in operation, new developments happening outside of New York. NoHo Hospitality, they've been at Career Day often. You've probably talked with them. And so Luke's going to share with you his story and background. And then I was just talking to Mark Weller, to your right. Hospitality College.
Yes.
What year?
95.
1995. So if you look at that, 22 years ago. And I was asking Mark a moment ago, major developer in the real estate business, building a huge project in Baltimore. And I said, Mark, is that, it's like 500, 700 million? He's like, oh, whoa, time out. How big is it?
$7 billion.
7 billion. 7 with a B, billion. It's a Johnson & Wales guy right here. I said, okay, I have my resume. So imagine yourself 20 years from now sitting on the stage with one of the world's top global companies in the insurance business. 12 restaurants now?
15, actually.
15. So 15 restaurants. A bunch of them, a dozen in New York, I would imagine.
Almost a dozen, yeah, exactly.
Imagine so in New York City, you drop in, you get 11, 12 restaurants, or $7 billion in development in the city of Baltimore. It blows my mind what our graduates are able to do. So today we're going to have a conversation, but before we do that, we'd like to run a video showing a little bit more about these guys, how they met and where they're from. So we can cue the video, please.
My name is Luke Ostrom, principal owner of NoHo Hospitality Group.
David Andrew, lead executive from Marsh USA.
My name is Mark Weller. I'm the founding partner of Weller Development Corporation. I got a degree from Johnson & Wales.
Johnson & Wales.
Johnson & Wales University.
We really connected and re-collaborated again on this project in Port Covington.
Port Covington project is transformative. That's the best word to describe it. It is one of those projects that literally changes an entire region to change the narrative around the city of Baltimore.
Yes, morning. I met this guy in a dorm room at a hockey camp, okay? That's how the power of relationships right here. He's now my general counsel.
You really want to know the truth about the honey badger, why it interests me so much? He doesn't give a shit. He just doesn't care. He keeps going until he gets to his goal.
And right away, it was a real connection. When you find that old Johnson & Wales soul and someone else that you immediately have that connection with. You have an idea, and you find others that share that same idea, that can all come together and collaborate on something, and then you actually see it materialize and open up, and there's something special about that. It's gratifying.
You always want to be the better person, and you never want to say anything bad about anybody. I've developed my own strategy around it, which is really I root for everybody. And by rooting for everybody, I feel like my own success has really taken off. I threw very large-scale parties tied to my fraternity. One of them was over 2,000 people, and we threw it every year, called Around the World.
Around the world. And that was
Fantastic times. Some I can share, some I'd rather not share.
I was in charge of security.
David had his own business, would go from party to party, and he never gave me a discount either. And it made you realize the power of partnership. These guys were as vested in the idea as I was. They went out and sold the tickets. They went out and helped organize the party. Yeah. Each tent had a different themed drink. I had the fattest guy in the fraternity dressed up in a hula skirt. Everything I spend my money on and everything I do has to have a benefit back to the project. Right. If there isn't, there's no point in doing it. Yeah, it's like we do this because you can bring the highest quality talent and show them from the water what's going to happen.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Little slipper here.
What's going on, David?
Good to see you, man.
Right.
Good to see you.
Good.
How's it going?
All right, buddy.
How are you?
Yeah.
How's everything?
We've remained great friends, and our careers have grown. We found so many different ways to continue our relationship, both professionally and personally. So whenever he's in town, we get a chance to hang out. He is in town, he's doing business. There's also that extra couple hours at the end of the day or that night when you get a chance to go out to dinner.
It's just tough. I mean, these businesses are tough though, man. It's like people don't understand what it's like being a small businessman these days. Collaboration up front and early, partnership up front and early with the right partners will make any project. It doesn't matter whether it's development in restaurants and hotels or whatever it is. It just makes life a lot easier.
The power of partnership is integral, I think, to success. Certainly as you start to grow and scale, if you can really have a reliance on some other people that you can trust, I think it can really contribute to your overall success.
I learned early on that you needed to be in control of the reins, so to speak, a master of your destiny. It really sparked something in me that made me turn down the job offers. And from that point on, from the minute I left college, I didn't work for anyone.
There's just something incredibly satisfying about seeing the product that you dreamed of actually turn into reality. I think it's a series of relationships throughout your career that help you get to where you're eventually going to go. I believe that the meetings that you take sometimes that seem as if they are somewhat meaningless at the time, in fact, years later turn out to be very, very important because of the relationship that you started to build at that point.
So that's impressive. I brought a red Solo cup, just when I was here in the 80s, we used blue, it's a little bit more Johnson & Wales kind of a color. But you think about what you just saw, quite amazing. And before we continue, I just wanted to send a shout out to Mark Stevens at Plank Industries for that video. It's fantastic. And let's take a moment now to think about each of our panelists. Looking back, not everyone's a great student. I wasn't a great student. I struggled in my first and second year of college. I was a little distracted by maybe one of these. Some of you know what I'm talking about. But a good college education has what I call a latent effect. That is, it creeps up on you later, and the benefits broaden as you go along. I certainly found that to be true. I found my stride in my third and fourth year of college. And what about you guys? You can be honest. What was it like for you back when you were a student? And maybe what we'll do, let's start with Mark. I mean, Sagamore Development Company today, nationally known. What were you like as a student?
Well, I was, just like everybody in this room. I just had a backpack and not a lot of money and was going from class to class and dreaming up ideas. I think the biggest thing was I had a dream of doing some big and important things and making a difference. I didn't know exactly what that meant.
and I didn't know where where B really was from. I was at A right now, and I didn't know the path that was going to get me there, but I knew I was going to do something interesting, and I think the only thing I did that I know was right at the time was I tried everything I could from a work perspective, from a friendship perspective, from a experience perspective, and I think that helped shape into what I am today, which is I found something I was passionate about, and I went with it, and went all in, and we've created some results. We have a long ways to go, but we've created a lot of results to this point.
Yeah, you show a lot of courage, I think, and certainly as I've looked at your current standing. Were you courageous as a student? Were you a go-getter?
Yeah, I was in the classes that I loved. That was the difference.
Same here, right?
And so the classes I loved, I did great in, and I was an A. And then the ones I wasn't as interested, I didn't do as well in. But I knew I had to do them too. But it was an interesting journey. And what I realized quick is that I was going to be successful at what I wanted to do and what I was passionate about, and not in fact what I was just being necessarily taught. And so I had to go the right direction for me, which was building and creating things and creating opportunity, creating jobs, creating buildings, just making my mark on the world.
So you found the seeds early of what you love.
Yes, I did.
Wow, that's fabulous. I mean, you guys met in a fraternity?
Yes.
Is that right? So Dave, what about you? I mean, I know you told me a little bit about your background prior to Johnson & Wales. What were you like as a student once you got here?
As a student, and what kind of student?
Yeah, what kind of student? I mean, when you got here, were you outspoken, courageous?
First and foremost, I must say that I'm not exactly sure how I got up here.
Me neither.
I remember sitting in the seats that you're sitting in just a few short years ago. I used to take class in this auditorium. So I really appreciate you listening to the words and having me today. It's all surreal. As a student, I was a hard worker, I guess. Always a hard worker. What was important for me was my schedule more than anything. Back in high school, my marketing education teacher introduced me to Johnson & Wales. Just a short story. I was a part of National Student Organization, DECA, and I received a half-tuition scholarship to Johnson & Wales University. And when I heard that and being announced at our national convention for DECA, I was elated. I thought I won the championship. And I think that was announced in Florida at Disney World. So in my mind, I won the championship and I'm already at Disney World. And I remember going back home and talking to my sister, my older sister, who was my guardian at the time. And I told her, Louise, I got a half-tuition scholarship to Johnson & Wales, a half-tuition scholarship. I was excited. And she, in her West Indian, slight West Indian accent, says back to me, who's going to pay for the other half? Oh, yeah, funny to you. Not so funny back then. I'm like, who's going to pay for the other half? You're right, who's going to pay for the other half? So I march into Mr. Stancil's office, my marketing education teacher, my DECA teacher in high school, and I say to him, I don't think this Johnson & Wales thing is going to work out. Because quite frankly, who's going to pay for the other half? And he says to me, David, you work 4 jobs, 5 jobs if you have to make up and supplement it, to make sure that you graduate from Johnson & Wales. So for me as a student, it was about schedule more than anything, right? For economic reasons, my time was the most important. A typical day for me at Johnson & Wales, I would go to school in this building. I would leave, get on a bus to the culinary campus. I'd work for continuing education from about 1 p.m. to about 9 p.m. at night. I would leave there, I'd go to the Marriott at the time. I would bar back and bartend. And then after that, late night, I would DJ epic parties late night and return and repeat, right? So time was important, schedule was important, and I must know anything that had the word marketing in it from a class standpoint, I zoned in and
and I was very, very focused on that. And that was me as a student.
Wow. Did you work too, Mark? Were you working when you were here?
Entrepreneur. Yeah, through parties. Primarily through parties. Yeah.
Parties, yeah. I think I might have been to one of those.
Yeah, I think you may.
I think I showed up. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Amazing. How many of you are working right now? How many work right now? Look at this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's the differentiator for Johnson & Wales right there.
Yeah.
I worked at Wendy's in 1986 when I was a student. On the one on the east side, 2 in the morning, my friends would all come in sideways, I'd be serving burgers. And you know, that's what we do. That's what we do. Luke, what about you? I mean, by the way, Mark, where are you originally from?
Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo.
Yeah.
Dave?
I'm from a small island off the coast of Grenada.
Off the coast of Grenada.
Population 5,000, 13 square miles.
Wow.
Called
Wow.
Carrico.
Carrico. Wow, that's amazing. Luke, what about you?
I'm
What's
from
your-
upstate New York, Ithaca, New York. It's a relatively small town, but how was I as a student? You know, it was a mix. I think to your point, it kind of depended on the classes. I took it pretty seriously the whole time. I knew at a pretty young age that I always wanted to be involved in hospitality. I probably didn't know what that meant at that young age. You know, starting back at 14 years old, scrubbing pots and pans in the local Holiday Inn up in Ithaca, New York, on working papers. And I think working papers in New York State back at the time didn't allow you to use heavy machinery or equipment, so they threw me on the pots and pans, and I scrubbed pots and pans for about 6 months, which was one of the best educations I ever received. And from there, kind of worked my way up and really found a passion for cooking at the time. And I was a chef for about 10 years after Johnson & Wales, until I eventually took the leap of faith and taking the white coat off and transitioned into a very different part of the business, but still kind of under the same umbrella. And at Johnson & Wales, I certainly took my college education experience a little bit more seriously than I did probably prior to high school. It was a different time for me. But I think when I was here, you know, I was trying to figure out the right balance of social living and experience that comes with that, which is at times can be as valuable as education that you get. And I'm not surprised, but also pleased to see the amount of hands, which was almost everybody, like 9/10 of the room raised their hands about working. And that's a real part of the education process also. I think it's, if you can find that balance of life balance with work balance with educational balance, and you keep those as 3 principles from now until forever, you'll find yourself having a lot of success potentially with that. And a lot of it, I think, comes putting in that extra effort. You know, generally what I learned early on, particularly at this school, because some students were very good at the classes we were taking, some were less so. That became apparent. Everyone was putting in effort for the most part, some less than others. But I'd say, you know, strategically, what I learned here early on in school, that if you always try to put a little bit more effort than the guy on the left and the guy on the right, you'll have a good chance of succeeding at what you do. Whether they put in more or less than you do, you know, if everyone tries, obviously there's a lot of effort that's going to go forward. You're going to produce some great product, but put the effort in, take it seriously. This is a flashpoint, a teeny little minute of a whole lifetime of existence for all of you guys. It was for us when we were in school. And I look back on it, honestly, sometimes I look back and wish I, not necessarily could relive it all, but almost wish it was a little bit longer, or I could have maybe absorbed like a sponge a little bit more out of it when I was there. Because once you're out in the field, which, you know, it's a real starting point, life kind of starts post-school, if you will. It's a heck of a life you're having right now. I remember it well. And it's the next chapter of a real long book that you need to read throughout your life. And I would say, this is a real exciting point for you. I remember it for me, it was, and I learned that quite a bit at the school.
Yeah, it sounds like you worked hard and tried to focus while you were a student. Where did you live when you were in Rhode Island? Sophomore year.
Sophomore year, I lived off campus. I'm trying to remember exactly where. It was up on the hill, probably
East side.
that way, yeah, east side. So I had a couple different experiences, some in the dorm, some off the dorm, off campus.
Yeah.
And I think there was benefit to both of those, quite frankly. I think, you know, dorm life, especially when you start school, is those are some treasured moments, as I'm sure all of you have experienced, or many of you have experienced. It's just a great way to meet people. You're forced into it, and you're thrown into the life existence of meeting people and developing relationships. And don't underestimate those relationships from your past, the ones that you're meeting today, people you don't even know within this room. You know, it's amazing how at some point those can often come back. I think three of us are an example of that, where, you know, these guys knew each other through school, and the three of us all collectively did not know each other through school. But fast forward 20 years, just the connection of Johnson & Wales, the connection of knowing that, you know, we all had that background really brought us together to collaborate on a very significant project that we're working on right now. So it's incredible how much that can really take you later on, and not to take that for granted.
Yeah, the ripple effect of that, by the way, is when your team is here, Luke, recruiting, just now in the fall, they were recruiting for Baltimore in a development that you're building and that you're managing risk on.
Right.
Can you imagine? So the ripple effect of these folks are you going up to somebody with a resume, and the back end of that, the business creation, the job creation, is right here, Johnson & Wales. This amazes me. That's the American story. I mean, it really is when you think about it. I bet it's a lot of work. I bet it's a lot of work. And it sounds to me like each of you somehow have had a trigger event or two just after graduation that got you launched. So here we are talking a little bit about the history, the background, what it was like here in Rhode Island. Stories sound a lot like you. A lot of hard work, focus, debt, right, Dave? Things to manage. Luke trying to establish and differentiate. What Mark didn't tell you is Johnson & Wales was a second school, right?
Yeah.
So he came here to find his way. How many of you have done that? My daughter's at Syracuse. She's going to have a second school if her grades don't go up. Yeah. Now, that's a joke. But, you know, you guys did very, very well. You worked hard. And so let's take a leap now. Imagine a couple of years after you graduate. Now you're out. All very entrepreneurial, hardworking, and focused. What was the one or two things that happened at that early stage that really got you launched? Like, if you could give these folks a little description that might help them of that little trigger event or two, what would it be? You want to start us on that?
Sure. I think just jumping into the workforce and jumping into something that you think you might like is probably the most important thing. Because if nothing else, you'll figure out what you don't like if it doesn't work out, and you'll know you're going to start moving in a different direction. And I think the best thing that happened to me was I remember being at a restaurant, I don't know if it's still here, Capriccio's. My father took me there. The place was an unbelievable Italian place, and my father took me for graduation. Took my whole family there, and he raised a glass and he said, "The gravy train has come to a screeching halt," and that was officially the moment when I knew I was on my own. Actually, when I called him from Mexico, and he hung up the phone on me when I had no money, then I really knew I was on my own. But the reality is those moments of really being forced out there on your own and going trying to figure it out. That was the best thing, and it wasn't necessarily one job. It was a series of things that I did over the last, probably the first 10 years were just incredibly important. And I think the biggest thing that I learned, not just from being here, but just in life, is just keep trying new things and different things, and eventually you'll get to where you go. And it's not going to happen overnight. I had a couple friends that became doctors and lawyers and other things, and it just looked so easy. They knew what they wanted to do in high school almost. They got out of high school, they went to college. They got out of college, all of a sudden they were taking an exam or studying, and they had an exact career path. Well, that's a very small piece of kind of the workforce that's out there. There's a lot more people, I think, like myself, who don't know exactly where they're going. They have a pretty good idea, but they have to figure it out. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just try things and try as many things as you can to figure out what you love and what, more importantly, just as importantly, what you don't love.
Yeah, you have that thread rolling, which is find what you're passionate about, what you like. And, I think when I listen to you, I bet you have a good life. You know why? Because each day you probably have a good day because you like what you're doing.
Yes, that's right.
Isn't that funny how long it takes for us to learn that? A good bit of advice right after school.
It's not perfect. And you tell people, though, you're never going to be, life is not going to be 100%, everything you like. So but if you can get to, I like to use this as a rule, but 90% of my week is great. And there's a lot of challenges that come in there. But if you can live 90% of your 60 hours that you put in at work a week, really 70 sometimes. Yeah. But sorry, I didn't mean to short you there. But yeah, in all seriousness, if you can spend most of it really enjoying what you're doing, you're gonna be really successful, no matter what.
And if I came to your conference room, is the honey badger really there?
There's a honey badger. There's a rhino. There's a lot of things. Yeah.
Fantastic advice, Dave. What about you? I mean, right after, so you're launched, and it sounds like you're an entrepreneur when you get out of here. What happened?
Right from the beginning, and much like what Mark mentioned, I was one of the fortunate people quite frankly, that knew exactly what I wanted to do right from the start. And for me, that sort of tipping point was specialization. I honed in on what I love to do, and that's what I did from the point that I left this university to this point right now. And I witnessed some of my friends who graduated from school the same time I did, and I witnessed what I sort of coin as their sort of head on a swivel, right? Each couple of years, they're doing something different. I just remember having, a friend of mine meet me, a couple of years out of school, and he said, Dave, what are you doing now? Risk management. And I asked him, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm in real estate. Fast forward maybe 5, 6 years, same friend. What are you doing, Dave? I'm in risk management. What are you doing? I'm in manufacturing. I'm doing this, concept. I'm like, great. Fast forward 10 years. He's like, Dave, it looks like you're doing well for yourself. What are you doing? This thing called risk management. That's what I'm doing. So my point is, I can give each of you a shovel and a drill. And I could tell you to drill 1 inch down for a mile. Or I could tell you, drill 1 inch wide for a mile down. Which one's going to strike oil first? For me, specialization.
Great advice. And so you knew when you got here, and the minute you launched, you hit the go button.
Absolutely.
Wow. And so here you are. What about you, Luke? I mean, you were down at Harborside, so you're in the culinary college,
Yeah.
probably in labs. You probably remember 2 or 3 chef instructors, right?
Oh, yeah.
That you
Yeah,
had.
there's some
Any
old
characters
memories,
you
for
want to talk about here, or
No,
we'll hold back.
I'll save that.
Yeah, some of them that I had in the 80s were still there in the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
But you're in the older building. Have you been down to the college campus?
I have once before. I'm looking forward. We're going to take a look at it later today. I'm excited to see it's changed a lot.
Well, we wanted to thank you 3 because you paid for it.
That's
Thank
right.
you very much. We appreciate that. By the way, the building you were in, I paid for with my generation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But did you ever think you'd be dropped into New York City like this? I mean, you're upstate New York.
Yeah, I think New York City, yes. New York was, I grew up, I had some family that lived in New York, and I think I always knew I wanted to spend at least a couple of years of my life in New York and try that out, just, from a life experience and from a working experience. And I started working young, I liked work. I think I liked the physicality of work. It gave me some, direction, and there was some mentorship that I got out of that I wasn't getting elsewhere. And I knew New York it's certainly back in that time, 20 years ago, it was kind of the place to be. There was a few cities in America that I think had some significant hospitality programs going on generally in the workforce. Now that's changed a lot. I would say you can actually go to, there's probably 40 cities around the country right now that actually have some significant things going on. So there's a lot of opportunity in a lot of places. But I listened to your example, and I listened to Mark's example, and I think, including my own example, it's a real, there's a lesson to be learned in this, that there is no perfect path. You didn't totally knew what you wanted to do and tried a bunch of things and found the right direction. You knew exactly what you wanted to do, and fast forward to right now, you have a ton of success with it. And I always knew what I wanted to do as far as being involved in hospitality. I just spent the first half of my career always just assuming that I would do that as a chef, and did so successfully. But that's vastly changed now to the second half of my career of starting a restaurant organization with 15 brands and restaurants, bars, and lounges, and a live music venue, and hotel F&B operations, and much more on the business side and development side of things. So I think knowing, especially early on, that there's no perfect path to get there, and even one of your paths in this room is going to be a little bit different, which is the beauty of kind of how life works. If you can capitalize on that idea and you can figure out and find the right path for you that you'll be the most successful at earlier than later by trying different things, but also by having some direction of understanding what you're really going for, I think you could potentially have a lot of success with that. no matter who you are, plus the hard work, the effort, showing up on time as much as possible, if not all the time, will help, certainly.
What was the first job right out of JWU that you
You know, I got out of school and I got a job as a lead line cooking at Ocean Edge Resort in Brewster, Massachusetts on Cape Cod. And it was supposed to be a seasonal gig. And I went there for a few months. And that place is open year-round, but I don't know if you guys know Cape Cod well, but it gets pretty slow in the wintertime. But they keep the resort, it's a year-round venue. So they kept a couple of us on to work year-round, and I spent about 9 months there working the winter season. And it was pretty cold and slow, but you know, meeting some great old fishermen in local bars was always fun also. So, and you know, really had a passion for travel also. So I did some travel after that and went around the country, and then worked out in California, in San Diego for a couple of years, and then worked in Boston for a couple of years. But probably during that journey, always kind of knowing that at some point I would end up in New York. I knew that was the right spot to go, at least to kind of capitalize on the direction I had come from so far, and to try to meet new people and develop some new relationships. And then I did so in about 2001, almost 2001, and I haven't left since.
So you dropped in New York 2001. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, Luke is being really humble right now, and I think you learned that at Johnson & Wales a little bit too. We do get our hands dirty. We have to work hard and stay down to earth, but I will tell you, his operation with Andrew Carmelini, Chef Andrew Carmelini, is one of the, I would say, I think one of the most exciting groups that I've ever seen and ever been able to work with from a restaurant and hospitality standpoint. And you know, back to the relationships of it, you know, I think he's really understating how cool the hotels are that they operate the food in, how cool how great the food is, how incredible they are as partners. And it comes back to the relationship of having Johnson & Wales in common, but then also having faith in his understanding and education and partners. I mean, I interviewed for the project that we're all working on together. You know, for David, quite frankly, he had to work for that business, and we went through a process and talked to the 4 biggest insurers in the world. And David, you know, clearly at the end of the day, there's other people that could do things very, very similar, but it was the relationship and trust that I went with to choose who was going to handle all the risk management in our project. And the same thing with the food and hospitality that we've done so far, which is pretty significant. There's a lot of unbelievable, sexy, and talented groups out there, but put that together with hardworking and humility, and it's not always there. The same humility isn't there. They brought the humility, and then he also brought Johnson & Wales and the education I understood with him, and that allowed me to feel really comfortable with my decision making.
It's amazing. In my generation, I was telling you guys, you know, my former roommate, we were knuckleheads. He's the manager at the Marriott Marquis, and he hosts events for the Alumni Association too. And this is a family, you know, and I use that metaphorically. Somehow we all grow up here, and we leave, but there's a piece to Johnson & Wales that hasn't left. It's been there from the beginning, back to Mary and Gertrude, that is called a work ethic. And not everyone here has it yet, but it's really not that it will never be there. It's just that some of you don't have it yet, but you're all going to get it. And then you go out in the world, and then you meet Johnson & Wales people. And it creates a spark of trust and reliability and conversation, and I see that happening with you. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
no
amazing,
doubt.
you know.
And it's important to note that just because Mark and I are fraternity brothers from Phi Sigma Kappa, there wasn't any sort of easy path to eventually win the RFP to do the risk management for a project of this size. It probably was the most difficult request for proposal that I've experienced in my entire career. And I could also talk to some of my colleagues at Marsh that have been with Marsh for 30 plus years, and they would echo the same sentiment. We put in an incredible amount of man hours, incredible amount of resources. You know, thankfully, we have those resources available. But you know, it's important to note that just because you have a connection, that's just the beginning of the conversation. You have to bring your A-plus game, your work ethic, and that brings to mind something that I really admire about Mark. Routinely, I'm up late working, or early, however you want to categorize it, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I have a thought, I have an idea, I'll send him a note. You know, most people, in the morning, afternoon, they'll send me a note back. I'll send him a note, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. This is an idea. What do you think about this, Mark? And I get a response back. It lets me know that he is as fully engaged as I am. And that's an exciting place to be.
Yeah. So you're really saying you earned it. I mean, even though there's relationships in business, you still have to go out and earn it.
For
Whether
sure.
it's putting in a bid pack, an RFP, the numbers still have to work. By the way, he has 5 kids. That's why he's up at 3, right? He's you know, got something going.
That's true.
Did you start your own firm right out of Johnson & Wales? Is that what you did? Where did you do it?
In New York.
In New York City?
In Long Island.
Oh, in
New
Long
York.
Island?
Yes,
Okay.
Long Island, New York. And right out of school, I decided that I wanted to be the master of my own destiny. In fact, my high school DECA training, as well as my DECA training at Johnson & Wales, I served as president of the DECA chapter for the university, as well as I was vice president for the state of Connecticut for DECA in high school. So my mind was shaped differently, I would say. I had an entrepreneurial drive and zest. It was really shaped by my mentor, Mr. Stansel, my marketing education teacher. So I went to New York and I started my firm. And we didn't have some of the fancy tools that we have now, like Google or the internet. I took out the good old-fashioned yellow pages and I started calling contractors because I figured who needs sort of a backroom support better than contractors who are on the job all day long, a shovel in a truck, building things, fixing things. They need someone to protect, right? And I specialized in that construction development and eventually, build a nice size brokerage firm, mid-level brokerage firm, focused on gut rehabilitation, new ground-up construction, and that's pretty much was my path.
And you met your lovely wife here.
Absolutely.
I
My
did
wife,
too.
Maria.
Maria's here.
Yeah.
I met my wife here too. We have little Johnson & Wales children running around now. But so you're in Long Island. You're
Yeah.
building a book of business now.
Absolutely.
So you're showing up on a construction site, knocking on a door,
Sure.
card, pitch,
Good old-fashioned cold calling.
cold
The
call.
traditional way,
How
right?
many months did you go having to worry about groceries before it kicked in?
Long time.
Long time.
Long time.
You
yeah.
stayed with them. Thank you.
Long time.
My wife and I too. So, but you're illustrating that hard path, right?
Sure.
And the
Yeah.
courage to start something and to
Yeah.
spark something and stay with it.
Right.
So do you have a lot of perseverance in your personality, Tom? The stick-to-itedness?
I would say so.
A honey badger?
Honey badger, yeah, honey badger. Yeah. But that work ethic was ingrained in me from a very young child. As I said before, I'm not from this country. I was born in an island in the Caribbean, and as a child in elementary school, my house wasn't wired for electricity.
Wow.
So I would have to do my homework by kerosene lantern.
Unbelievable.
So to fast forward and be up here, live streamed, talking to student body where I graduated from university, it's amazing to me. It's humbling, is what it is, because little kids that come from where I come from don't have this opportunity.
And I can only imagine. Congratulations. You can clap for that one. I bet if we added up the number of jobs you've created in this economy, substantial.
I mean, in Baltimore alone, Luke and I are probably responsible for 1,000 jobs.
This
Just,
city?
just us two. I mean, not in addition to what I'm doing, in addition to, so. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I used to go to Fells Point in the 80s. A lot different now.
It is different.
A lot different.
There's a lot of it still the same, but yeah, it's different.
You know, so job creation. How you feel? Inspired a little bit? I appreciate how all of you are paying attention. I'm watching you all. And you look great.
Well, the reality is we were them.
Yeah.
So it may not seem it right now. I have 5 kids and a sport coat on, but we were right, Dan.
Right.
We were.
Sure.
Luke will tell you the same thing. We were them, and we were running around, just trying to get by, quite frankly, and not really sure what the future held, but knew that it was bright.
Yeah.
And in America, it is bright every day, you know. And we do have a lot of hope, and we do dream big. And I think you have to know that and believe that to your core. And if you do, it'll work out if you work hard.
Yeah, life isn't easy. We get curveballs, don't we, gents?
Yeah.
We get those curveballs early, mid-career, and late. You think it's going to get easier, it doesn't. 60-hour days or weeks are typical, whether you're at the beginning, middle, or end, but we grow to enjoy them. And we really appreciate the benefits that come from them. So now, let's look back to our group here. And we'll have time for some questions, so I'm going to cue you to start thinking. In about 15 minutes, we'll open up. Think about what 2 or 3 questions we might want to engage these 3 and have them answer. So I'll give you a heads up as an audience. Now, when you're job creators, investors, and thinkers, and influencers the way the 3 of you are, I think often when I talk to guys like you, you have a perspective on what's coming. I think you probably have to have that perspective. Most competitive restaurant market in the world, one of the biggest reinsurance companies, you have to have a perspective on the future.
Sure.
You're managing risk, $7 billion happening in Baltimore at Sagamore, your own company. What do you see coming in the next 3 to 4 years, economically or in our fields, that you could offer our community here in terms of perspective?
I'll go first on that. I mean, I think that from my perspective, I mean, I'm allowed to sit pretty high and then zoom down in, but sitting up at 60,000 feet, I think the world has changed, how we communicate has changed, how we live has changed, and it's the normal for everyone in this room, most of the people in this room. But there's many people in the middle of this transition who are about my age, and we're having to really watch it. And I think the biggest difference is everything from the size of your apartment to the lack of a need for a car, or the socially sort of conscious ventures that many of us get involved with that just weren't available at the time. I think that the world is much more transparent. I know that word is used a lot, but I think it's really important. It's much more transparent and it's much quicker. And I think that if you can't react quickly and you can't understand what's coming and you can't do something that's real and authentic, another highly overused word but important one, authentic, I think you're going to get caught flat-footed with a life that is somewhat uninspired. And I think that just looking at your passions and deciding your future off of what you love the most is probably the most important sort of piece that I can see with where the world is headed.
Yeah. In your video, you said something that really stuck with me. You said you treat everyone well. I really, really love that notion. And
yeah.
Now you're talking a bit about some values, I guess. I mean.
Well, I think one of the things, it's real simple stuff that I was taught when I was young. When you go somewhere, you wear nice pants and tuck in your shirt. And I'm not saying that's always the rule, but I try to get that even into my own children. You just never know who you're going to meet or how you're going to meet them, and especially nowadays with how casual many things and people are. You could be at the airport and sit next to your next partner, or your next boss. You could be getting a coffee, and the same thing can happen, and you'd be amazed how much that connection happens. And part of it is giving everybody the same respect that you want and you deserve. But the bigger part is just being open-minded to listen to people, talk to them, and hear what they're doing. It's been amazing the amount of relationships that have been built literally from just casual run-ins, whether it's an introduction from Dave or Luke or anybody in my world. And I think it's just really important that you always keep that in mind. And just the key to that, though, is being open-minded and friendly. And no matter how bad a day you're having, just treating everybody from the person helping you at the door to the CEO of the company with respect and dignity.
How about that? Can we all agree to that? Treat each other well? A little respect and dignity to go around? Sure.
I think that that's part of how the world has changed a little bit. I think there was a lot of And Luke can tell you a million stories about this too, especially in his industry. There was a lot of, us or them and trying to kind of, we're going to win versus others. And in some businesses, maybe that's necessary, but I think it's overused in a lot of industries, and I think it's easier to be supportive of each other than it is to not be. And you'll go to New York and, there's 10 restaurateurs that he's friends with all kinds of interesting businesses, and they keep in touch and they're friends and they exchange ideas. We do the same thing in development. Mm-hmm. David does the same thing in insurance, and I think it's all about that relationship and really being smart about how you conduct yourself.
Yeah, sounds like the byproduct of that, or maybe the direct product of that, is new opportunities come.
Absolutely.
From all of that, huh?
Ideas and opportunities.
Ideas.
Yeah.
Are ideas the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideas have always been the future. I don't think that's a new idea, if you will. I think times have changed. I sound like an old geezer on a stage saying times have changed, because I remember when I was 20, watching other people that were 40, 50, saying times have changed, and watching my generation at the time. And the truth is times will continue to change. They've never not changed. They always will. To your point, I don't think I had a cell phone in college. I think I got my first cell phone right out of college. People had pagers, but it was like just slowly coming out as far as that technology. So it's changed a lot, obviously. But I think the reality is that, today, in today's environment, if you will, is you guys are not so different than we were. We're not so different than you. You guys won't be so different than people when you're 20 years from now. They won't be so different than other people. People are people. It's the surroundings and the environment for people that kind of evolve to what society becomes. And I think that evolution, generally speaking, if you can stay current and stay on top of it, and it doesn't necessarily mean using the latest, greatest piece of technology or staying as socially connected as you possibly can, but it does mean that stuff also. I think what it means is not giving up on paying attention to what's right around you also at the same time. And I think what we're in a little bit of a bubble of is a little bit of a side effect of the speed and rate of how fast things are changing is it's too easy to get caught up about what's right in front of you as opposed to what's in front of you and what's around you. And it's kind of widening that peripheral vision. And I talk to a lot of my team members about that now is, don't be so necessarily narrow focused here. Just try to open it up to like here, and let alone even bigger than that. And I think what happens if you start to do that is you start to really understand that there's so much opportunity generally in life, no matter what it's about. That's actually pretty closer than you think it is. And I think it's finding a nice balance. I think it's accepting change and evolution. It's accepting sort of the currency of where we're at. I think you can be really advantaged if you listen, if you pay attention. It doesn't have to be every second of the day, but certainly generally it can really take you pretty far away, I think.
Yeah, your organization hires quite a few students.
We do, yeah.
One or two things you think you would look for? I mean, you're at a higher level with Andrew in the organization, obviously. Sure. But what is that spark that a good graduate shows when you're in one of your properties and you're talking to them and you leave and you're talking to Andrew and you Uber and you go, did you talk to this lady? She's amazing.
Yeah,
and you lay it out.
It's a great question because there's no perfect formula of the right candidate for any type of position. There's good characteristics that potentially can be combined with good skill sets that can make it more favorable for someone to get a job. But I think generally, we don't always, especially with younger hires that we bring on to become team members of our group, we don't necessarily look for history of work and how much experience they have in the field or what they know. We can teach just like you guys are being taught here. You're going to get taught in the field. You're going to get taught during the work environment that you spend your time in. It's not necessarily about how much you've done. It's about a little bit more about the core value that you have as a human, as an individual, and how you show that potentially in, for instance, some type of interview process. Valuable work experience takes a long time to build. You all may have none, you all may have some, you all may have what you think is even a lot, and it might be a lot at this point. But no matter what, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, 25 years from now, 30 years from now, et cetera, I'm assuming you guys are going to probably keep working for a really long time. And sometimes I tell a lot of our team members that it's about the marathon and not the sprint. You know, if you all came up with your own guess of an age of maybe someday you'll retire with a margarita, and one of you guys said you were in Mexico, maybe it's that same beach, having a good time. A lot of people often say, well, I might be 60, 65, maybe 70, maybe 55. It's actually interesting to poll that as a real dynamic of different ages. Sometimes it's even younger. But the truth is, if you're 20, or you're 22, or you're 18, or you're 25, that's a lot of years of work. Imagine now, 65 if you're 20, that's 45 years from now. So you're gonna, it's good to know how to sprint to get yourself in the door, but it's also good to know how to have the endurance to be able to go through all the necessary steps that it takes and enjoy them while you have them. Enjoy what you have now, enjoy what you have later, try to enjoy it. Get a big position that you can try to get one day, and assume that you'll probably get a totally different position potentially later on. You have an experience of starting your own business and being very successful at that, and I think a lot of years probably went by in that example where you never assumed you would do anything but that, and yet you ended up collaborating with another even bigger business, which totally changed. I was a chef for many years. I grew up, you know, peeling potatoes, slicing carrots, and short order omelet cooking. And then worked my way up to be a significant chef in New York in several restaurants, and now I haven't touched a pot and pan professionally in about 9.5 years. So it's good to be open and be able to adapt to that change, but really absorb as much as you can out of each stage of your working life and your educational life, and never stop trying to learn. You guys are in formal education right now, sitting formally in seats, listening to formal dressed guys who don't always dress this way and like giving speeches to you, but the reality is education happens far outside of this room and far outside of this school. It's been happening your whole life, it's gonna happen the rest of your life. And if you don't give up on that idea and you absorb and you take that and you make that a principle philosophy of what's important to you throughout your entire working career, you have an advantage to the people that are next to you. You do. If you strive for that a little bit more, you have the upper hand in that situation, and that will take you a lot farther than you think it will.
That's amazing. You know, I have a lot of friends from the 80s that are still chefs. They typically own their own place. Yeah. But I was like you, I don't perform as a chef anymore. Do you still like to cook?
I do. You know, I probably don't miss it professionally, and probably I don't miss it professionally because I'm still around it so often. Literally every day I'm walking into one of the kitchens of one of the restaurants. I'm very close to it. I think if I was totally removed in another business, I would maybe miss it professionally because there's a tremendous amount of gratification that I got personally out of that work. But I really enjoy what I do now, probably even more so than I had done. I don't give up any of those experiences. I think it's certainly got me to where I am today and really gave me an understanding of all the different aspects of my business, which gave me an advantage certainly in my career. But my cooking is limited to a summertime barbecue, and my wife puts up with me stinking up the house with limited venting in a New York City apartment, because that's kind of how it works in New York. But yeah, no, I do enjoy cooking, but I haven't done it professionally in quite some time.
We're going to start a 12-step recovery for chefs. Just see us in about 10 years. We'll help you. Right. But I think what you're also illustrating, Luke, is when you become an entrepreneur and you partner with a really good chef like Andrew Carmelini, and you evolve, you can take the things you learned at Johnson & Wales and build on them and take them in a different direction. Dave, what would you say to yourself 20 years ago now, as you look at folks who 20 years from now will be in your seat? What advice?
What would I say to the 20-something-year-old me?
Yeah.
Back then, I was laser focused on profit. Working 80 hours a week, sometimes more. Just laser focused on building and growing and money and profit. I would tell myself back then that, what's the purpose? It has to be something that you're working forward. There has to be some sort of purpose, right? To help others, to change the environment, to assist others that are struggling. And the lesson that I would tell myself is, it has to be about purpose as well as profit.
The profound is the first thing I think of when you say that. Would you guys agree? I mean, is this...
Totally.
Yeah, I think...
Me too.
I mean, on the On the money front, I think it's a good example. It's a relevant example. Money's real important to life. It's not the most important thing, but it's an important aspect to existing in society, often so, especially in business. You know, I think sometimes, too often, younger candidates, younger team members, and I mean that from like age 15 to 30, spend a lot of time focusing on the now and what am I getting now, what's my pay rate, what's my salary, what's my benefit, et cetera, et cetera. And all that is really important. I'm not undermining that. We strive, we spend a lot of time working on making sure that we try to have the best offering we can for our team members because I understand how important it is. The truth is though, it undermines a little bit the longer term play. And you know, I often look back and I would, you know, similar to your question earlier, if I were to tell myself, you know, 20 years ago, what to focus on more, which I've learned in the last 20 years, is I think it's good to have a three-part plan, which is you focus on the now, and I mean the now being this year, what's going on today, next week, next month, this year, and then simultaneously you have a 3 to 5 year plan, and the now hopefully is feeding that 3 to 5 year plan, and then after that you have a 10-year plan. I'd like to say honestly you have like a 20, 25 year plan, but let's be honest, it's impossible to have a true 20-year plan. That is such a long amount of time, and everything changes so much that we'll eliminate that amount of time. And I think if you focus on the now, you potentially can strive to get what you want and what you need to potentially get you to the next step for that 3 to 5 year plan. And the 3 to 5 year plan potentially can be your priorities and your goals. I want to potentially do this, I want to achieve this, I want to get here, I want to move here, I want to figure out what I want to do, etc. What am I doing today and next week and next month to get me towards that point? And it'll naturally just feed itself off. Life experience, I'm a little bit of a believer of everything's meant to be. I do believe in that a lot. And you know, the reality is if everything's meant to be, it doesn't mean that you can't necessarily control that idea. It's meant to be, but you can potentially decide where the lanes of the road are, for the most part, constructed so you're in a certain path to get you to where everything's meant to be. And, you know, generally speaking, if you're feeding that 3 to 5 year priority plan, that's going to hopefully get you to where you eventually want to be. I want to live in this type of place. I maybe want to have a family one day. I maybe want to own a business one day. I maybe want to be the president one day. I maybe want to, you know, move to Hawaii one day. Whatever that is, that long-term plan, one feeds itself to the other. And I think that coupled with the ability to be a little bit Gumby, flexible, adjustment.
It's a 90s reference.
It is a 90s reference. I'm giving a throwback because I'm feeling it's a throwback. You know, I think that gives a real advantage. I think flexibility is key. You know, even things that we talk about now in the Baltimore project, you know, from the first time we met to even today, some things have changed and evolved. Some for the better, most for the better, some for the different. 2 years from now, we'll be talking about it again. It's evolved even more. The truth is, you can set out a real goal and plan. You got to feed it and allow it to become what it really becomes. I think I would tell myself that. I think I would try to hear it and understand it. I wouldn't fully hear it if I were you, and I get that truly. I would listen to it. I would absorb it. I'd think about it. I'd maybe stuff it in my back pocket, honestly, just to hold on to it for later on and as I'm going. I'm thinking about now. I'm thinking about a few years from now. I'm thinking about the next decade. If you guys are 20, 22, the next decade, you're 30, 32. 30, 32 is a great time to have a long-term plan of when you're 40. 40 is a great term plan to have a long time when you're 50. So you're working in these 10-year increments. You can really be pretty advantaged, I think, to get yourself and find yourself some success in your own careers.
That's great advice.
I just want to piggyback a little bit off of what Luke mentioned about planning. It's important. You can't sort of go through life waiting and wondering what's going to happen. What should I do now? You have to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, I must tell you, it's going to be really difficult competing against these two guys. Very, very difficult because they have defined plans. You have to have a personal go-to-market strategy in every aspect of what you do within your world, a personal go-to-market strategy. From the moment Mark told me about the potential of this Port Covington project back in 2013, he couldn't go into details. I'm doing something special, right? Every 9 days, he doesn't realize it, but every 9 days, he got something from me. A phone call, a handwritten note, a FedEx package talking about risk, something. Every 9 days until the day I had to present with my team for the request for proposal. You have to have a plan, essentially.
You know, you say something, again, profound, both you and you too. I mean, I'm looking at your project up there, $7 billion, massive. Each of you has said something in addition, and that is you take action. Like you have a plan, but it's not in here. You have a plan that you're acting on, you're physically moving on. There is no sitting on it waiting for it to hatch. It's a very active process. And I think what I'm also hearing is you make your own luck. And I think, Luke, you were just inferring some of that, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
you make your own luck.
You do the best you can to make your own luck. You know, there's a lot of aspects that contribute to that, certainly, but you never stop trying to make your own luck. I think that's the important part. And yeah, planning. Planning's important, you know, and don't underestimate getting great at planning. That takes a lifetime of experience of being great at planning.
That's what you guys do at Sagamore. I bet planning is the essence. Are you a lucky guy?
Yeah, I'm lucky because I get to do what I want to do every day and have a passion for it. But you want to know the 20-year question? I mean, I think just finding your passion, which I didn't necessarily mean to do, but I did, right? And it worked out the way it was supposed to, and then developing a plan from there on how I was going to move that ahead. And I just looked at other people in my business and just said, how did they get ahead? And there's no exact path for anybody how you move forward in this world, but just take note of people who have gone before you and follow that. And I think that your luck will happen on its own. But you got to get up every day. You got to go. You got to go for it.
You gotta go.
There's no talk.
No.
It's go. It's think and then go. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is not an accident. This is the real world when you get out of school, and it's a lot of fun if you're in the right lane and you're in the right field. Yeah. And I would just say, like, find that lane and find that field and get going and get after it. And the biggest thing, like I said before, is dream big, and don't let anybody tell you can't do anything.
I like that.
Like, there's just like so many people telling me, no, I can't do this, I can't do that. Where'd I go to school? Where'd I do this? Where'd I do that? I got a bunch of Ivy League folks working for me. It's fun. It's great. I hire people from Brown. Let them know. You know, just in all seriousness.
Yeah.
Johnson and Wales.
They came to your parties.
Yeah, they came to my party. now we work with them. Yeah. In all seriousness, I think it's and this is for the folks that have a real path and know exactly where they're going. It's awesome, and I admire that up front. But I just don't think you want to be limited by anything other than sort of your dreams and your passion once you get out of school. Because you don't want to get put into an absolute lane that says I went to hospitality school, therefore, you know, I have to be in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, keep it open.
And keep your lanes open, because you look at now, and it's like my hospitality education comes back. I own restaurants and hotels and opening up all kinds of things, and we're doing really interesting things around really the hospitality. The theme of something as large as this is how to take care of people, and that all comes back. But that's not the essence of what I do every day. Yeah. And I think if you allowed me to get into that lane and only think that way, I think my dreams would have been the dream of where I wanted to get or where I really want to go. I'm really not even close to getting there, but where I want to go would be stymied very, very early. Wow. So I think it's really important to dream big, and just like I said, don't let anybody tell you can't do anything. And if they do, just get them out of your life. Move them aside. Yeah. Because the reality-based thinking is great at certain points in your career and life, but at this age right now, you need to be thinking about really what you dream about doing, and not what somebody tells you can or can't do.
Yeah, I love the notion of think and then go.
You got to think first, but
but
you can't think. You can't overthink. If you think too much, you'll be stuck and you'll be sitting there. And they won't have 14 restaurants, and we won't have, we won't have what we have, and Dave, because you can get, paralysis by analysis is what we call it.
We've been surrounded by people like that.
Yeah, exactly. And people like that are useful, but as a leader, we need them in our room, and I need them in my orbit, but I need to also say that's their approach, and I just need to put it in and consider it, and then I need to move ahead.
Move ahead.
Yeah.
We have time for just a little bit more, and then we're going to try one or two questions, come in for a soft landing. So why don't we let Dave go, and then we'll open up for some questions.
I just want to piggyback off of what Mark said. Just because you graduated from hospitality school, what's to say you're not going to be a specialist in risk management for the hospitality industry? You graduate from culinary arts. What's to say you're not going to focus and be a risk manager specifically for food and beverage? There's so many opportunities out there based upon where you sort of fit in. And it's really wide open.
It's wide open. So with that, probably do we have a couple of questions here and maybe one or two? Go ahead.
I'd like to hear your take on neurological diversity within your respective. I'd like to.
We heard you.
I'd like to hear your take on neurological diversity within your respective fields.
Sure, I'll start with that. I mean, diversity in general, you know, is. I mean, we like to honestly consider our organization diversity as our strength. No organization can survive, let alone be truly spectacular at what they do, unless they surround themselves by a lot of really different, diverse, great people and individuals. And you know, I would say, generally speaking, that we take that in consideration all the time, particularly in the hospitality business. We serve a very diverse group of clientele. Our guests are all of you. Our guests are all of New York. Our guests are all, in some cases, different parts of America. And that's a diverse crowd. And we're better equipped, and you know, we have more strength in our group if we are diverse, for sure.
Yes, but I'm referring to the diversity from up here, and I'm referring to specific individual developmental disorders.
Got it. No, that's a very good question. You know, I think more than anything, what we try to do in our organization is set up opportunity, and a lot of different opportunity, potentially for a lot of different type of people, potentially with even what you're talking about, with potentially disabilities or just disorder, or just difference of being a human being. My organization, it's changed so much, you know, from the days that we started at just one restaurant. It was a couple of us kind of running everything and doing everything and cooking the food and shaking the drinks and serving the customers, et cetera, to a much bigger business now that we have a lot of different parts of that business. Human resources has become a real organization within our industry. It's almost a little micro business of our business. Events and marketing of those events and sales of those events and catering in general is a whole nother business within our business. Finance and accounting is a huge part of our business right now, which has nothing to do with shaking the drink and cooking the burger and actually serving the guest. You know, call centers of taking phone calls for reservations, big part of our business. Operations, big part of our business. Marketing, big part of our business. We've tried to diversify not only the people within our group, but the opportunity. And you know, I don't know if I'm specifically answering your question, but I think what we strive to do is create different sections of our business that can at some point be as inclusive as possible to a lot of different people. So if someone doesn't necessarily fit into a certain part of our business because maybe they can't be as successful as they could doing one particular job, they can still potentially be a real part of our organization because they can do another job within our organization.
I think that's always been the benefit of, there's a question over here. The benefit of hospitality is its inherent flexibility.
Yeah.
And we have another question?
Yes, all of you are busy people. I was wondering how you decided to organize your time and what was important when you made the choices in what you were going to prioritize.
Is that with with our whole lives, everything?
Well, like Dave in college was working multiple jobs,
Yeah.
and you guys commit yourself to 60 hours a week or more, but you have to stay healthy enough to keep doing that. How do you prioritize what you're going to do and keep going?
That's a great question. I mean, you have to find time for yourself. Actually, the biggest benefit I see from technology is the ability to do more. You know, when I was a kid, my dad used to go to work, and he left for work, and he was at work the whole time. He literally sat at a desk, and if he had a meeting in LA, he flew to LA. There wasn't even fax machines at this point, right? So I don't even know if this room knows what a fax machine is, right?
No, they don't know.
Exactly.
They don't know.
Fax machine was the greatest thing that ever happened. But in all seriousness, I think the technology has allowed people like myself and the guys up here with me
to balance out our lives better than we would have been able to do. I can actually do a call from a game. While it's not optimal, watching my kid's game, but I can take a break in between real quick and go do it versus having to be at the office all the time. So that's the biggest thing that I found. And prioritizing when we were younger was much harder because the technology wasn't there and you had to be all in. There was only one way to work and you had to be actually there and doing it. And there's a portion of that, but nowadays I think there's more flexibility and it allows for this. And I also think health and wellness in general is something that we're focusing on in this entire development, and I think making it part of your lifestyle, whether it's how he prepares his food or how we encourage our teammates that work on my team to go to the gym and use the gym memberships that we provide, or just things like that. I think both. I think they would all answer the same question. I think you have to find the balance. And you have to find what he said before. You have to find that work-life balance, because if you don't, you run the risk of kind of burning out.
It's a good question.
That work-life balance is very important, extremely important. It's actually one component of the reason that I decided about 5 years ago to sell my business and then partner and work with, accept a position with the global leader for what I've always done. I think it's important that you have time to really have that purpose of what's important in life. And lastly, my wife will rein me in every now and then and say, listen, you have to slow down a bit. And it's important because this is the only temple that we have, and we have to protect it.
Before we finish, you had somebody, Dave, you wanted to acknowledge.
Absolutely. Two people, actually. I'd like to thank Brian Oglesby, the silent man always in the background, but always making things happen. And quite lastly, I'd like to thank the person who was responsible for me to come to Johnson & Wales. He happens to be in the crowd today. My high school marketing education teacher, Mr. Ronald Stansel. Please give him a round of applause.
He's right here. Thank you, Ron. So as we wrap up, I want to thank the panel. I mean, the advice you give, you couldn't put a value on it. I mean, just to get the three of you on a stage for an hour, if they had to pay your consulting rate, we'd have to have sold tickets. So let's start with a round of applause for these alum. Thank you, gentlemen. Great job. And I also want to thank a few other Johnson & Wales people. We have the Dean of the College of Hospitality Management, Paul McVetti, in here somewhere. Paul McVetti. Dr. Lou Dabrowska, the Dean of the College of Business, who helped put this on. We have Vice Chancellor Joe Saley here, who helped coordinate this with Lori Zabata and Lisa Gentile down here, and we offer them the thanks. Thanks for putting it together. Nice job. And then, I always like to end these things. Thanks to all of you. One thing to remember, students, without you, there's no need for any of us. And when we come to work every day to serve you, we think of that. And we pray every day for your success. And when people like this come along, it's rewarding for us. It's what gives us passion in what we do. So to our students, how about a round of applause? Thank you very much.
Should have known at the end of the summer, the innocence fades and the weak become stronger. Should have known at the end of the summer I'd be lost without you.